And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. Is it a great day to begin a new military action against Iran? There is speculation on various press sources around the world that President Trump is executing a brilliant bluff. What bluff? Saying publicly that the killing has stopped in Iran, that they are no longer hanging people, they are no longer executing people, that we are close to some kind of diplomatic understanding with the mullahs in Iran. But the idea of doing that is basically to fake them out so they are less prepared for a U.S. attack, and a major U.S. attack that could come at any moment. Which is it? It can't really be both, can it? Meanwhile, CNN is reporting the U.S. and several European countries are urging their citizens to leave Iran as a deadly government crackdown intensifies. President Trump said yesterday that Iran had called off scheduled executions of detained protesters and that he was told the killing has stopped in the country. But he added that he is still weighing military action. Meanwhile, an internet blackout imposed by Iranian authorities has stretched into its second week. Even SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet terminals used by Iranians to circumvent the restrictions have been jammed using what experts describe as military-grade technology. And talking about that military-grade technology, to go back to some coverage from Al Jazeera, that's Qatar's media expression of that particular Gulf state, they have a headline that says, Trump's bluffs, why a U.S. strike on Iran remains a real threat. They write, from Venezuela and Iran, Trump has attacked countries in the past when diplomacy appeared to be working. After threatening to attack Iran for days in support of protesters challenging the government in Tehran, the United States President Donald Trump appeared to dial back the rhetoric last night. The killings in Iran, Trump said last night, had stopped, adding that Tehran had told his administration that arrested protesters would not be executed. There are many people who simply do not believe any of that. And that actually is reported in both Mediaite and in Axios. Axios writes, President Trump is delaying a decision on striking Iran as the White House consults internally and with allies about the timing for such an operation and whether it would meaningfully destabilize the regime. That, according to 5 U.S., Israeli, and Arab sources with knowledge of the situation. The question is, why are they relying on Israeli sources? Well, because what they found in the war in June was Israel has tremendous security, spy work, penetration of what is going on in Iran. They certainly know more, the Israelis, about what's going on in that country than the citizens of Iran actually know. Meanwhile, the military option remains firmly on the table, so reports Axios. But Trump's decision to pause has exposed deep uncertainty inside the administration and among allies about the risks of a strike that punishes Iran while inviting major retaliation. As Trump takes time to consider diplomatic options, the U.S. military is evacuating troops from Middle East bases and sending reinforcements to the region, including the USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group. While a strike does not appear imminent at the moment, writes Axios, A U.S. source familiar with the situation told Axios that everyone knows that the president keeps his finger over the button. I'd say it's probably on the button, not just over it. Israeli officials are among those that have expressed reservations about the past 24 hours. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, spoke to Trump on Wednesday and asked him to wait to give Israel more time to prepare for possible Iranian retaliation, according to 3 U.S. sources and 1 Israeli source. The New York Times first reported on Netanyahu's request. An Israeli source said that in addition to concerns about retaliation, the current U.S. plan includes strikes on security force targets in Iran, but is not seen by Israel as strong or effective enough to meaningfully destabilize the regime. That, of course, has been there for more than 40 years. The state of play, according to Axios, Trump has said repeatedly that he will take military action if Iran kills protesters who have participated in a weeks-long uprising against the regime. Help is on its way, he wrote in capital letters on Tuesday of this week, urging the Iranian people to take over government institutions. Several thousands of protesters are believed to have been killed by the regime's security forces, which have restricted internet and telephone access amid a brutal crackdown. The White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, claimed today that 800 planned executions had been postponed due to pressure from Trump. A day earlier, Trump said he had been told on good authority that the killing in Iran is stopping and that the regime has no plans for executions. Shortly after Trump's comments, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told Fox News that there are no plans for the hanging of protesters, a hallmark of previous crackdowns. The Americans are reassessing now, an Arab source with knowledge told Axios. Still, the Iranian regime shut down the country's airspace for several hours yesterday in fear of a U.S. attack. And there's a piece in Mediaite that under a colorful headline, it's a colorful headline that says, "What the actual F word?" Conservatives erupt over Trump heel turn on Iran. Much of President Donald Trump's coalition is up in arms over his heel turn on Iran over the last 24 hours, openly disputing the president's claim that the Iranian regime has stopped killing its own people and speculating that the assertion is part of a ruse. Earlier this month, Trump pledged to come to the aid of protesters if the regime turned to violence. On Tuesday, Trump renewed his vow, writing, "Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price." That was what he said in a post on Truth Social. Coming up, he has coined a new term. And he has, from his Truth Social, help is on its way, MIGA. Not MAGA, MIGA. What does MIGA stand for? We will get to that. There's also a question about a ruse. Is it a ruse that President Trump says he wants to call off the midterm elections? Can he do that? Oh, we will get to that and more on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, President Trump put on his Truth Social, help is on its way. That was all in capital letters, of course. And then MIGA with 3 exclamation points. MIGA stands for Make Iran Great Again. Now, who knew that this was a responsibility of the American people or the American president? But the idea, if you want to make Iran great again, you're going to have to go a long way back. I mean, Iran has not been one of the great or positive powers in the world, not for a long time. And you can say, well, you go back to the Shah, and the Shah was an ally of the United States. He was an ally of Israel, in fact. But it would be terrific if his son, who was 65 years old, Reza Pahlavi, if his son came back to power, which is possible. When he says help is on its way, MIGA, 3 exclamation points. Later that same day, CBS News reported that the regime had already murdered between 12,000 and 20,000 protesters. That's an extraordinary number when you think about it. Just the mechanics of rounding up 12,000 to 20,000 protesters on the streets and then just processing them into execution, which is what they have been doing apparently. During a Wednesday afternoon yesterday, question and answer, the president declared the killing in Iran is stopping and repeated the regime's justification for its crackdown that people had been shooting at security forces. So when people are shooting at security forces, of course, they're going to get executed. That's the idea. Again, this is a bizarre situation where a lot of Trump loyalists, people who are deeply committed to supporting Donald Trump, people like Mark Levin and Newt Gingrich and Lindsey Graham, are all speaking out against him on this issue. Mark Levin said there's overwhelming evidence the Iranian regime's slaughter has not ended. The tactics have changed, and we all know it. And when the world's attention turns elsewhere, thousands in prisons will be executed after they're tortured, and the others will be hunted down like wild animals. The door is closing on these courageous and beautiful people. So many of them young, like our own children and grandchildren. And Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican of South Carolina, expressed similar sentiments, writing, every indication that I've seen that the Iranian regime's killing of protesters is still very much in swing. The death toll is mounting by the hour, hoping that help is on the way. And Lindsey Graham also disputed reports that Trump had ruled out military action. Nobody knows where the Trump administration is on this issue. National Review's Noah Rothman unhappily marveled at what a betrayal this would be. What a historic missed opportunity this would be. That is, if he doesn't go in with some force against Iran. And then Mark Levin speculates, and this apparently is what they've reported in Al Jazeera as well. Mark Levin says, could be a head fake in the lead to something. We will know soon enough. Well, we certainly don't know now. There's a great deal of confusion on this issue. President Trump says he has been told that the killing in Iran has stopped, which is, of course, wildly untrue. So either the president is being fed lies or he's about to launch the airstrikes. I suspect the latter. So said Eitan Fischberger in his reaction to President Trump. Meanwhile, there's another history-making position that President Trump has taken that leads to the Reuters headline that says Trump told Reuters that when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. The president expressed frustration that his Republican Party could lose control of the U.S. House of Representatives or the Senate, and increasingly it's possible it would be and the Senate because of decisions made by candidates in Alaska and elsewhere to run for potential Senate seats that could be taken away from Republicans. The Republican Party could lose control of the U.S. House of Representatives or the Senate in this year's midterm elections. President Trump cited historical trends that have seen the party in power lose seats in the second year of a presidency. In the second year of his first presidency, President Trump lost 43 Republican seats in the House and lost control of the House. It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms, Trump said. He boasted that he had accomplished so much that when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. We've accomplished so much that we should call off the election. This is truly bizarre. And by the way, why is it that the party in power loses seats? It's because every election in America is about the same thing. It's about change. People look around them and there's a lot of stuff they don't like. And that afflicts every president. President Reagan, who's very popular, lost seats in 1982 after he had just won in a landslide. So basically, there's a natural instinct for people to say and look at things, and things in the country don't appear to be operating on such a wonderful state. We have people who talk about something is rotten in the state of America, invoking or echoing Shakespeare. But with all of that, if you want to vote about change, basically, it's kind of tough to avoid the conclusion that we need to replace, certainly need to replace Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and maybe even John Thune, the Republican leader of the Senate. Coming up on the Medved Show, we have the great opportunity of speaking to the decorated war hero and astute columnist, David French, who will be joining us coming up on the Medved Show. And let me introduce what we're about to do here with just a little bit of a personal confession. And the confession is that even before I was doing a regular show on the radio, I used to occasionally, when I saw something in a newspaper that was particularly meaningful and persuasive, I would cut it out and share it with my wife. And that's been the case with a number of recent columns by David French, who is a columnist for the New York Times. He's a graduate of Harvard Law School, and he is also previously a senior editor at The Dispatch and a contributing writer at The Atlantic. He is also a former constitutional litigator with an emphasis on freedom of faith, and a past president of the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE. David, and before we get started on his most recent contributions, David made a real contribution as a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he was awarded the Bronze Star. But before we get started, just one note for people who want to benefit from guests of the caliber of David French, join us on YouTube. It is free to join our YouTube channel, and you can sign up for it now. David, your most recent piece, the headline is "Something is Rotten in the State of America." And you have a very strong statement in the middle of the piece. You say that I'm writing about all this because the Trump administration may be on the verge of the most catastrophic national security mistake of my lifetime. What is that catastrophic potential mistake?
Using any kind of force or threat of force to take Greenland. To put this in perspective and to sort of think about this, it is highly likely, if not certain, that an aggressive move against Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, is Greenland is a semi-autonomous region of the Kingdom of Denmark, that Denmark is a NATO ally and that Denmark could invoke Article 5 of the NATO treaty against us as an aggressor. Now, I do not think that France, Germany, Britain are going to go to war against the United States if we do something. I do think that it would fracture NATO. I think it would effectively end the alliance. And it is very strange. We have a very strange circumstance right now where you're seeing Swedish troops, French troops, German troops, as well as Danish troops all heading to Greenland, essentially to serve as a deterrent against America, And so, there are a lot of people who, I've listened to a lot of stuff online about how the European allies have not been, doing their fair share. And some of that critique is correct, especially Germany. But they're rearming at a pretty rapid rate right now. But the fact that they've not done enough does not mean that they have not been incredibly valuable. In fact, there was a really interesting Rand Corporation study done recently that said, okay, if you look at the total collective defense burden, the total allied defense burden of defending the free world right now, America is responsible for 39% of it. 39. That's too much, too high a percentage. We have other partners who should step up. But what that means is 61%, even now, even with some of our allies not doing all they should, the majority of global defense is borne by our allies. So if you break an alliance with our allies, you're going to diminish the strength of our nation dramatically. My friend Corey Shockey had a great piece earlier this year where she wrote that America's strength has been in its cooperative relationships. Think of the difference between NATO and the Warsaw Pact. NATO is a cooperative alliance of liberal democracies. The Warsaw Pact was an extension of the Soviet Empire. Which proved stronger? NATO, obviously. But here you have Trump really trying to create a much more Soviet reality than a traditional American reality when it comes to national security.
A lot of this raises questions, which is, it seems that President Trump has a thing against Scandinavian nations and maybe even Scandinavian Americans in the United States, if you look at the situation in Minneapolis. What is the deal here? We spoke on the air earlier today about Billy Long, the newly appointed ambassador to Iceland, not Greenland, to Iceland.
Iceland, right.
Yes, and he said that he was looking forward to becoming ambassador to Iceland and helping Iceland become the 52nd state in the Union, I guess, after Canada.
That's just remarkable. It's just absolutely remarkable.
Insane, frankly.
It's insane. And I don't think it's a particular hatred of Scandinavia so much as it's a hatred of all of Western Europe. There was a really interesting story about how a lot of Western European diplomats see J.D. Vance as just essentially hating them. And so, and if you read the national security strategy, then you'll see a lot of ferocious criticism leveled against Western Europe. And I would say that a lot of that is rooted in sort of this idea that they see Western Europe as sort of an incubator of wokeness connected to American wokeness. And I think in their view, wokeness is a greater threat to the United States of America than China or Russia. And so I think that they have this very Twitter-influenced view of Europe, where you take a lot of pictures from Europe, many of them showing images from Europe, many of them showing genuine problems, that Europe has genuine problems, no question. Many of them showing genuine problems, but then extrapolating from there that Western Europe is on the verge of collapse, that it's on the verge of a jihadist takeover, that all kinds of wildness, that Western Europe is a liability, not an asset. And so you have this view on the new right that actually has, Michael, more emotional anger at Western Europe than they do at Russia. And I'm not making that up. There's this intense visceral anger that exists in parts of the new right against Europe that does not exist against Vladimir Putin.
Well, you have a tremendous argument against that. You mention a name at the beginning of your column, and the name is Mark Peters. And you say, I want you to remember the name Mark Peters. Now, Mark Peters sounds like an American, but
Yeah.
he wasn't, was he?
No. Danish soldier who lost his lower legs in Afghanistan, fighting in Afghanistan where thousands of Danes fought. And the Danish military suffered higher casualties per capita, per the population of the country, than any other allied military in Afghanistan.
Wow.
And so we're turning on an ally that isn't just a paper ally, an ally that has bled with us on the battlefield.
So why can't we do what the Danish foreign minister and the Greenlandish foreign minister have called on us to do, which is to work with them, follow the treaty we made with Denmark in 1951, and go ahead and use some American facilities on the soil of Greenland and under the supervision of Denmark? We do that with bases in Germany and bases in Japan and bases in Korea. Why not here? We will get to that and to more with David French. His piece, Something is Rotten in the State of America, posted at our website, michaelmedved.com. We'll be right back.
Medved.
What an honor to continue the conversation with David French. His most recent piece, Something is Rotten in the State of America, and the one before that is Fanning the Flames, talking about the flames not in the other side of the world, not regarding Greenland or the Middle East, but regarding Minneapolis, regarding ICE and its role in the United States. David, in terms of the situation with the confrontations and the continued shooting in Minneapolis, your general response of how that could be handled better. One of the things that you mention is that for President Trump and very much for Kristi Noem, they jumped to conclusions that it was Renee Good who was responsible for her own shooting. Other than avoiding jumping to conclusions that may not have any basis at all, that other than avoiding that, what could be done more effectively to execute President Trump's plans for mass deportation?
Well, look, I mean, I think that we're forgetting recent history. And recent history shows us that every president in modern times, from Biden to Obama to Bush and before, has been able to deport illegal immigrants by the hundreds of thousands and even millions without creating a crisis in the streets. That deportations have been a routine part of American life and law for a very long time. People
and just for a moment, you made clear that President Trump is not the biggest deporter. Who was the king of deportations?
By some measures, it was Obama. By some measures, Obama deported more people than Trump ever did or will. And so, if you had done this on Earth 2, here's a way that Trump could have started his second term in a way that I think would have followed the popular will as expressed through his election. And that is secure the border and do normal paces of deportations with normal tactics, which prioritize deporting criminals, do not involve giant street sweeps and picking up people because they have an accent or because they look Hispanic. No, what it involves is if you had been able to seal the border, which I think to his credit, he was able to do early in this second term, and then you do reasonable, normal deportations, what you are starting to do then is you're starting to chip away at and diminish the illegal population in the United States, doing it the way that is least disruptive, most just, and quite fair. And when it's done like that, it would be a cause for some degree of consensus in this country. There's been a lot of people who believe we've had too many people coming in on the border and that criminal aliens in particular need to get out of here. Criminal illegal aliens need to get out of here. And if he had done it in a way, there was this interesting video I saw of a contrast between the media coverage of ICE under Obama and ICE under Trump. And it was some ride-alongs under Obama's ICE. And there's a couple of things you notice right away. They don't have masks on. They're wearing normal police-style uniforms. They're not geared up like they're about patrolling Fallujah in November of 2004. And then when they're interacting with the public, it's in a very non-controversial way, And so the reality is this is not the only way, or even the preferred, or the most effective way to deport criminal illegal aliens. Instead, what we're dealing with is something much more nefarious and much more dangerous, which is a series of deliberate, aggressive provocations where the best defense of them, and it's not a good defense at all, is that they're trying to create the impression that don't come to America, we're going to do scary things to you. The worst case is that they're deliberately trying to provoke the kinds of confrontations and incidents that we're seeing in the streets as sort of justification for greater clampdowns and greater control. And, as we record this, we're recording it after Trump made an explicit threat to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis. And so we're looking at provocation upon provocation upon provocation.
Okay. One of the things that you point out in your columns is that President Trump and Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, both immediately identified Renee Good as a domestic terrorist and someone who was deeply involved and conspiratorially involved in harming and even killing ICE agents. You say we know that's not true. How do we know?
Right. There's zero evidence that she is a domestic terrorist. Zero. There was no evidence when they said it. There's no evidence now that she was a domestic terrorist. And, one of the things that this is not an unusual phenomenon. The only thing that's unusual right now, Michael, is that this was caught on video in a way that millions of people have seen it. A majority of Americans polled, up to 80%, say they've seen the video of the incident. And so, but before this very visible incident, there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of incidents where the administration has come out with a story about what ICE did that's proven to be completely false. There was a 233-page opinion written by a federal judge in Illinois that went through and documented time and time and time again where the administration's story proved to be completely 180 degrees from the truth. This judge demonstrated that Bovino, the commander of Border Patrol, lied in his depositions. Just outright lying was the phrase that the judge used. And so, but it didn't work for the administration this time because the video was there, and immediately when you looked at it, a normal person could see a giant difference between a woman who was obviously backing out and trying to leave a scene, while as she said to the man who ultimately killed her, "I'm not mad at you, dude." There's a giant difference between that and like the vehicular ramming attacks we've seen at Charlottesville or in Nice in France. When there's a terror attack with a vehicle, you know it. This was a woman trying to leave. That's a very big difference. And when you use that phrase domestic terrorism, what you do is you amp up the stakes dramatically. You make things more volatile. And this is what they do, though. They pour gasoline on the flames. They just keep
Okay, and
pouring
speaking
gasoline.
of pouring gasoline on the flames, when people talk about the Obama deportations versus the Trump deportations, people who are defending this administration say the difference is that right now the people being deported are more resistant. They are more violent. They are more organized from groups like Antifa and other groups of, quote, domestic terrorism. What's your response to that claim that we have a tougher actions by the Trump administration than under Obama or Bush previously, or even Biden, because there's tougher resistance on the part of some of the illegal immigrants?
Well, we had the same. Antifa existed in 2024 when Biden was president. All of these activists existed in 2024 when Biden was president. Biden deported people by the hundreds of thousands. You did not see this because the way in which the deportations were conducted is dramatically different. What the Trump administration is doing is it's trying to create a show. It is trying to create a big show of toughness. One that, they create these hype videos. Michael, I don't know if you've seen this. They have cameramen with ICE frequently creating these hype videos showing how aggressive and strong that they are. Nothing about this is reluctant. Oh, look what you made us do. It is, we are coming for you. And here's the hype video, and here's the helicopter video, and here's the video from this vehicle, and here's the video of this tackle and this aggressive arrest. And so they're hyping this. They're not doing this reluctantly. They're hyping this. This is part of the core mission that they're engaged in. This is not a response to activists. They're trying to provoke activists, is the obvious implication from their actions.
Just earlier today, President Trump said, when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. He seems to be preparing for a midterm loss. Do you think he's right?
I think he's right. Barring dramatic changes, I think the Republicans are going to really get hammered in the midterms.
Wow. David French, his most recent columns are devastatingly effective and very much worth reading. You can take a look at them at michaelmedved.com. David, wishing you and your whole family a wonderful new year. And for all of us, maybe coming back to a little bit more common sense and away from the Insurrection Act and more, which more worthy leadership in this greatest nation on God's green earth.